mw-genics is the 2026 tactical role-playing roguelike life simulator video game. As said before in my previous episode, it's made by Edmund McMillan, which means it's going to be pretty weird and, as we heard, very complex in some way. In this case, the early gameplay loop is hard to understand and explain without the tutorial itself and actual gameplay experience. Now we can move on to the story. Yeah, I'm not talking about the story though. I am behind on how far I wish I was in mw-genics, so I can't even begin to talk about the actual story. I know a lot of spoilers, but the only real info I have about this game that I play for, I think, over 30 hours now is just my knowledge about other Edmund McMillan games. I have gotten almost all endings in The Binding of Isaac, and I know that that game is in the same timeline, which also has horrific implications, by the way. Of course it does. The art style of mw-genics is honestly very cute. It's an excellent time capsule, too. The game is clearly made in a way so it can display stylized depictions of both the cute things and the graphic things in life. Or, I guess, in catfighting. Sadly, I can't really show you the bad stuff, although it's not that bad to me. The school is far and away the kind of place that would allow this kind of description or visual showing beyond brief coverage. But, you can pet your kittens, you can fight a boss named Guillotina, you can turn on the safe animations when breeding, you can keep that setting off. It is your choice. All I know is that the art style is an excellent time capsule. This is because of the fact that mw-genics has not had its art style change in the many years that it has been in production. To paraphrase Wikipedia a little, and this is where the long part comes in, following the release of the critically and commercially successful video game Super Meat Boy, Edmund McMillan collaborated with programmer Florian Himso on the flash game The Binding of Isaac as a 3-month exploration of the roguelike genre. After the game's release in 2011, McMillan worked with Refinus, the same programmer from Meat Boy, to develop mw-genics, at the time spelled with a hyphen. The game was announced in October 2012, described by McMillan as being randomly generated and having cats fight bosses in a manner styled mainly after the Pokemon combat system. Shortly after production began, McMillan and Refinus realized that they had underestimated the scope of mw-genics, with the game experiencing feature creep, which, if you don't know what feature creep is, it basically boils down to where you want to add more and more and more, and it can result in either a game that feels like every detail is made with love and extremely complex, or very bloated and overcomplicated, which means that, going back into it, mw-genics was originally planned to release in 2014, and was going to be available for beta testing at PAX Prime in Seattle, Washington, around 2013. But Team Meat announced directly before the event that it would only be shown. The game was playable for the public at PAX East in Boston, Massachusetts in April 2014, with Team Meat insisting it would still release that year. After about 2 years of no development, Edmund confirmed in 2016 that mw-genics had been cancelled, while he focused on his new project, or projects as it would turn out. McMillan subsequently departed from Team Meat, which he credited to divergent interest in the co-owners, with him wishing to pursue new intellectual properties, while Refinus looked to further develop the Meat Boy franchise. But in January 2018, another 2 years later, McMillan announced in a blog post that he had secured the rights to mw-genics, unhyphenized, and that the project would begin development with video game designer Tyler Glacial, McMillan's collaborator from the game The End Is Nigh, a very good game I've not played. All the news about the game after this point is mostly sparse. This is due to the fact that Edmund stated in the 2018 blog post that the game was going to get a complete overhaul and would be backburnered while other projects got worked on. In 2022, the official Steam page was launched, and on February 10th, 2026, mw-genics was released. And all it took was us giving up on the version of the game where one half of the gameplay was going to be fishing. Yeah, half of the details were most of the game was revolving around the breeding side, not around the current other side of the game where you fight bosses and stuff. So they just didn't know what they were going to do. Truly, though, all of that work just for me to not like the art style. I'll admit the art style is growing on me, but I don't like it still, kinda. Attempting to be a little bit brief here, the length of mw-genics is also very important to keep in mind, I feel. The game is long. I mean long. They did not develop this game for over 10 years for nothing, and although I don't know about the story side, I do just know that the game is long. If I'm double checking, it is roughly 150 to 200 hours to beat, in quotes for some reason, the main content, according to Game Informer and PC Gamer. Websites I can't visit because the school blocks everything with the word game in the URL. Thank you. Either way, though, 200 hours to beat. For completionists, it can take over 500 hours. And I do know why. It's because mw-genics works on a system of acts and chapters. And each chapter of an act, you go through a map that has like 13 little spots, like there's spots on a board game or something. And each one of those spots, that's a fight. Most fights last from like anywhere of an average of like 5 minutes to like 30 sometimes if you get really unlucky. And it's because of the fact that the number of enemies, the number of turns inside like an actual turn set, I guess I would call it, and then just the length of animation, length of how long you take to figure out what you want to do next, they all add up so quick. The game is just simply not made for you to be doing very, very long runs. Well, I mean, the game is made for that, but what I mean by that is the game is specifically made in a way that you are not going to go beyond that 3 chapter structure. The only other thing that breaks away from that specific format is house battles, house bosses. I've yet to even face one, but I know what they are. Effectively, very occasionally, I think it's tied with story progress. A boss will come specifically to your house where you keep your cats, not on adventures, and you can only fight the house bosses with your retired cats, which is fun. It gives incentive to not just keep your cats around for either breeding for, eugenics, haha, or just looking pretty, or just, I don't know, some other purpose that I haven't encountered or can't think of off the top of my head. Who knows? But it's very fun. Either way, though, this game's long. Keep that in mind. This is a long, long game. I am at, I think, 30 something hours, maybe even 40, and I've just now hit Act 2. And I haven't even really hit Act 2 because I have a bunch of Act 1 stuff I still have to do. Like, this game is meant to take a bit. A long bit. Maybe even a few, like, boats, my guy. A big game. Okay, now is when I'm going to talk about the differences from The Binding of Isaac. Because here's the thing. Although mw-genics is undoubtedly very fun, I can't help but compare it to The Binding of Isaac. It's the only other Edmund McMillen game I've played, and a major amount of it after all. When I first began playing mw-genics, I could immediately recognize how RNG was tied to everything, same as before. But now that's kind of my complaint of the game. It handles RNG just completely differently than what I like and what I was used to, for the matter. Like, if I'm being honest, This explanation requires a little bit of knowledge about the other game, but in short, when you start a run in The Binding of Isaac, the only RNG, the only random elements is that the run itself. Nothing else is like cross-contaminated or even connected in really any way between your runs in Isaac. That's it. There's one counterexample, blah, blah, blah. We don't cover that though. That's the main point though. If you have bad luck, you don't have to worry about that for the next run. You can always try again. So therein lies my problem with mw-genics. The beginning of The Binding of Isaac and the beginning of mw-genics both have a lot of mechanics that you won't fully understand, and it could definitely ruin a run. You aren't experienced with the games yet. That's fair. I expected this. The game is already going to be hard. That is something I'm used to for these types of games. But the learning phase of a difficult game is not the same thing as starting again in mw-genics after losing and still dealing with major consequences if you lose a big or small run. Especially a big run, if I'll be honest. The game is very forgiving in some elements. This is just simply not one of them. I'm almost certain that I could have avoided getting stunted in how far I could have progressed the early game if I simply rolled a little bit differently. There are random events in this game where you simply cannot avoid them. And if it directly counteracts a major part of your strategy, you're just screwed. I genuinely am frustrated with this game sometimes due to that element. It's undoubtedly a rare problem because it only really can happen early game. And then I'm pretty sure you start building up a buffer later. I'm not there yet, I don't fully know. But it really sucks how you can get stuck for such a long time, and how it will undoubtedly discourage many. It discouraged me at first, and if this is a problem at the beginning of every act, that's going to be bad. But if it discourages many other people to not play the game at all, that's another major problem, right? It's a bad thing if people don't play the game? I think so. Well, no matter what, I do have to sadly end this episode just about here, because no matter how good or bad a game I play, I had to have liked it somewhat to even make a podcast about it, and there had to have been enough to talk about for me to even make a podcast about, so, you know. Anyway, goodbye. Good luck if you do ever start mw-genics. It's very fun, but you gotta know what you're doing. And also read. I will restate this from the last episode. Read everything. Do not just guess.